Hi, I'm Sam Garner and I'm going to talk about bereavement and grief. In your job, you are likely to encounter bereavement more than other careers, so it's important to think about the possible impacts on your mental well-being and how you can support yourself and others during these difficult times. Actually, what I'm going to talk about is grief. Bereavement is the loss, and grief is the process we go through following the loss. And grief can have an impact, and really does have an impact on our mental well-being. The process of grief is unique to each person. We all grieve in different ways and for different time periods. We may experience shock, anguish, loss, anger, guilt, regret, anxiety, fear, loneliness, unhappiness, depression, and the feeling of being overwhelmed and other emotions. Initially, the grief can seem all-encompassing, but this passes into waves of grief where we experience certain triggers such as birthdays or reminders or a song or a smell. What we are grieving is the loss of someone who's no longer there. The more a person was part of our lives, the more we feel the change where they are no longer there. We can also experience loss with changes in our life that aren't necessarily as a result of death. For example, going through divorce or separation is a form of grieving the loss of a relationship. Grief can mean we struggle with sleep, concentration, appetite, making decisions, and we can also suffer physical pain as a result. Our brains and emotions are so closely linked to our physical well-being. We need time to adjust to a new normal. Our world has changed, and often in a sudden way we have no control over. Our life cannot continue as it did before, and we have to grieve and become accustomed to a new way of life. As I say, the closer someone is to the dead person, the more entwined the lives, the bigger the adjustment could be. We can't avoid grief, and it's not healthy to avoid it. It is a process we have to go through. But there are things we can do to help with the process for ourselves and when supporting others. Now, keeping busy to avoid feelings may seem like a good strategy, but it's just avoidance and delaying tactics. Take time to grieve. It's important we feel the feelings. We need to express the pain, either by talking to someone or keeping a journal, detailing the emotions we're feeling. Bottling things up is never good. There's also a saying that the more you tell your story, the shorter it gets. We need to talk about the loss, the change. Each time we talk about something, a little part of it will seem less important and we will leave that out. So our story becomes shorter as we adjust. I went through a grieving process when my first husband left me, and I wanted to tell everybody every detail. And eventually it's like, yeah, he left me, whatever. That's how small my story became because I healed. It's also important to look after ourselves physically when we're grieving. Sleeping and eating have a huge impact on our mental well-being and resilience, and we can often forget that. We don't feel like eating, but we need to. Although, to be honest, I don't think I've ever experienced forgetting to eat, but apparently some people do. We have to keep ourselves well physically to have the energy to grieve, and it's normal to be tired more than usual or to want to sleep more than usual, sometimes because of fatigue, but also I find that sometimes I want to sleep to escape from difficult, painful emotions. It's also important we try to maintain positive actions for our well-being, and by this I mean doing something good. We can often avoid activities we enjoy because we don't feel like it or we feel guilty for enjoying ourselves at such a sad time, but don't. It's important to have a break from the intensity of emotions. This is one of the reasons why children often seem to be unaffected by grief and return to school or normal activities quite quickly. They cannot cope with the intensity of emotions, so they need normality to take a break from it. This is different to avoiding emotions, as we often do as adults. But take time for enjoyable activities. And it's also important to find time to laugh. Laughter has so many benefits and often helps us cope with difficult situations. Humour can act as a buffer to stress. I've been to many post-funeral events where people needed to laugh, and sometimes at the most inappropriate jokes, they were the funniest. We needed the release. Remembering lost ones and being able to laugh at funny memories is so powerful. Do something that is going to make you feel good or the other person feel good. It can be a welcome distraction from the intensity of your thoughts and feelings that are challenging. Maybe try something new like drawing or making music, growing seeds, reading a book, watching a movie, or try new habits. It's also important to remember that there is no time limit to grief. Again, it is unique to the individual. For most people, the pain will lessen, or we will become accustomed to the pain. For some people, they will be unable to adjust and may need further support because the impact of the bereavement has had a bigger effect on their mental health, and I will mention that later. When supporting someone who is grieving, it can be worrying. We worry about saying the wrong thing, or not knowing what to say, or not thinking we can make any difference, so we may avoid the grieving person. People who are grieving often say, look, it was the people that avoided me. But when someone is grieving, they need support from others just to help them through the process. Just by being there, you are helping. We can offer help by listening. Listening to their story, no matter how many times we've heard it, remember it gets shorter. Also remember that grief can be expressed through a range of emotions, including anger. If a person directs their anger to you, remember it's most likely not about you. We often express anger to those who are closest to us as we feel safe to do that. I will often tell my husband, look, I'm not angry at you, but you're here, so you're getting it. We need to be responsive to what the other person who is grieving wants. It may be that that person may want to have a normal conversation, so go along with that. It's important not to force anybody to open up. It may be that they just want somebody there to hold their hand when they cry. Be patient and be prepared to hear the same conversations over and over. Don't be afraid to use straightforward language. Say, I'm so sorry they died. Don't say you know how they feel. We often say this as a supportive bonding statement. To be honest, if I'm grieving, I don't care that you went through it as well. My pain is real. And it may also then make me feel guilty for offloading onto you when you potentially had it worse. Besides, each circumstance is unique. So we may experience similar emotions, but it won't be the same experience. It's also important that we don't set expectations on what expected behaviour should be when someone is grieving. We are way past the days when we had to wear black for at least a year. We can have our own recovery without set rules. You don't have to have the answers or know exactly what to say in each situation when you are supporting someone who is grieving. It's okay to say, I'm not sure what to say, but I'm here for you. What can I do to help? Things we shouldn't say to someone who is grieving is, well, it's all part of God's plan, or look what you have to be thankful for. He's in a better place now, or this is behind you. It's time to get on with your life, or well, they had a good innings and at least you got to say goodbye. If you are able to, offer practical assistance, cooking food, shopping, helping with organising the funeral, maybe helping the person to learn things that their lost person used to do for them. For example, paying the bills. Maybe take them out for an activity to have a break. It is important to get out of the house. There's no time limit for grieving, and often people find support and help dwindles after the funeral, but we need support continuing through the grieving process. Grieving may be continued for some time, and as I said before, it could be triggered by anything. It's common for a grieving person to feel depressed, confused, or disconnected, or like they're going crazy. But if the bereaved person's symptoms don't gradually start to fade, or they get worse with time, this may be a sign that normal grief has evolved into a more serious problem, such as clinical depression. If after some time has passed, the person you are supporting still has difficulty functioning in daily life, or has excessive bitterness, anger, or guilt, or is unable to focus on anything other than the death, they may be neglecting personal hygiene, self-medicating with alcohol, or socially isolating, then encourage them to seek professional help. If the person is talking about giving up and there being no point to living, then get urgent assistance. Now, studies have shown that cognitive therapies originally developed for depression and post-traumatic stress disorder are really effective at helping those with complicated grief. We also have to be aware that for some people, the bereavement may actually be a relief. We didn't want the person to die, but there is a relief that maybe their pain has ended, or that the burden on you has ended. Or maybe they had a negative impact on your life, so some relief is a natural emotion. A friend of mine struggled with her mental health for most of her adult life, and after several attempts, she died by suicide about 12 years ago. Yes, I was desperately sad for her, but I felt a sense of relief that her pain was over. And some people might find that's difficult to understand, and that's okay. Remember, it's okay to feel some relief as well as sadness. Try not to feel guilty about that. You also have to consider your mental health and well-being. It is the priority. Only support somebody who is grieving with as much as you are able to give without affecting your mental health negatively. It shouldn't take priority over you. Also, you work in a career with a potentially higher exposure to death, so you have to be proactive in supporting your mental health and well-being. If you feel overwhelmed at any time by bereavement or any other aspects of life, remember the brilliant support package provided by Bluebird. People you can talk to about how you're feeling. In my experience, people working in difficult industries often develop coping mechanisms of their own, and many times this is based around humour. Remember, I spoke earlier about the importance of humour, and this is true for you. Laughter is so important. I've worked with the police, medical staff, social care, and to be honest, laughter was vital to succeed in the role. Some people working outside the industry could have deemed some of the humour inappropriate, but it was necessary for our mental well-being. Take time to laugh. Don't feel guilty. Please look after yourself as a priority. You are important. Thank you for listening.